Welcome to Podcrushed. I've jettisoned my co-hosts, not by choice. Really, I was really wanting them here today, but due to technical difficulties and just general personal differences, which is to say personality difficulties, it's just me. They couldn't join. We nearly lost our guest because of how long we were making her wait. Because we were trying to figure it out between the three of us, but then we needed counseling. It's just, it was a whole ordeal. For now, let's just get into our guest. Today we have Daisy Ridley. You know her from Murder on the Orient Express, Ophelia, Chaos Walking, and then of course there's her first, not her first role, but it was her first breakthrough role, and one of her first as Rey in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Most recently, she has a whole slate of films coming out, among them Magpie, and then another, The Young Woman in the Sea. So actually, funnily enough, we were conquering and dividing. Other way around. We were dividing and conquering between the three of the co-hosts of Podcrushed, myself, Nava Kavlin, and Sophie Ansari. We each watched a film of Daisy's, and then we were all going to speak with her about it. But due to technical difficulties, I lost Sophie and Nava today, so it was just me and Daisy, and I couldn't really speak to her about the other two films that much. But nonetheless, we got deep into her formative years. We talked about Star Wars and The Young Woman in the Sea, and we did have a great time. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie. And I think we would have been your middle school besties.
Planning elaborate schemes to liberate the class pets. I'm coming for you, bunny.
So we start at 12.
Yes.
Coming of age, adolescence, whatever you don't call it middle school in England.
No, we call it secondary school. Okay.
So just paint us a picture. What were you experiencing? What were you thinking? How were you seeing the world?
The thing is, I've really been racking my brain, but I feel like I don't have that many memories from my teenagedom. And I don't know why. Like, I have a general hazy view. But where would I be? I was at boarding school. We did like half the day vocational, half the day academic. I mean, it was great, just living like a Harry Potter sort of musical theatre dreams.
So you were, how far away from home were you?
Oh, not far, like an hour,
okay.
Hour and a half.
Okay. And would you go back on the weekends,
yeah,
that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or?
And I was like the cool kid because my parents lived in London. I was like, guys, you can have a sleepover at my house and we're in London.
Right.
So yes, sleepovers. Also, my parents were always very encouraging of sleepovers. So they'd come in and there's like 6 teenagers in their living room and making breakfast for everyone. Smell of bacon when I ate meat.
So you became a performer, I couldn't tell, like a little bit your later years, right? Like, I mean, as you were into college, or were you becoming, like, when did you get into acting?
So I left school. I stayed at that school till I was 18. And then I left and tried university for a bit. My mum says it's 3 weeks. It was 3 months. But I got a job immediately, like a pub job immediately out of school. Then I went traveling for 5 months on my own. And then I got back and started auditioning. And then I probably had my first professional job at 20, maybe.
Okay. So if you were, I mean, so that's young. And I mean, you did Star Wars by the time you were, what, 21?
Yeah.
Something. So, I mean, was that on the horizon when you were in secondary school? You know, like, were you thinking, like, what did you think of the word artist then? Did you think of yourself as an artist?
No.
Did you want to be an artist? Did you take that seriously?
I took it seriously, but I didn't, I mean, I honestly really didn't know what it entailed. And I didn't know, I had faith that I could make a career out of it, I suppose. But I did not know what that looked like.
Okay. And was the school a performing arts school?
Yeah. But the reason I went was because I was naughty at my primary school. And then my mum having 3 children, trying to keep them occupied, used to send us to this, it's so strange, but over the summer holidays, this like 2 weeks in the Lake District, which is a very beautiful part of England. And there's like a instrument school, I guess. So we went and did violin for like 2 weeks. And I had a friend there who went to boarding school. And I was like, boarding school sounds fucking great. So I auditioned for there. But at that time, I really was not massively, I suppose, interested.
Yeah, right.
It was just, my mum thought it would keep me busy. So then it was sort of a lucky accident that I went there and loved it. And I actually left when I was, how old was I when I left? I left and went to another school and immediately regretted it. So I actually went back to school and my mum was so furious because at the end of the year that I decided to leave and it was this big dramatic thing, she said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went to the school and it just did not suit me, but I had a scholarship at my boarding school. So I wrote a letter. Maybe when I was, how old would I have been? Oh, no, I lie. Sorry, that was when I was 16. But I wrote a letter to the principal of the school and I said, "Please, can you give me my scholarship back?" And to his credit, he did. My mum sent him a nice old crate of wine, yeah.
Wow. So, and again, at that point, what did you want to go back to?
That's a good question. I suppose it was comfort and security in a way. I'd been there from 9
friends,
till...
maybe?
Yeah. I felt really like a fish out of water when I left. And I loved it. It was just, looking back on it, it's pretty... Firstly, it's amazing to live with your friends.
Yeah.
And the vocational mixed with the academic. But that's a good question. I just had this feeling that where I went to was just not the place for me. And I just had this massive sense of regret. And I think I wrote to my principal before I told my mum. This is so weird to think about, so I haven't thought about this in ages. I wrote to my principal before I wrote to my mum and I told her. And she was like, "Are you kidding me? The stress of you leaving a school, a full institution you've been for 7 years, and then going back, it was a really great choice and I was really, really happy to go back."
So I really want to dig in there, but I have to do my co-hosts proud, and we got to stick to secondary school for just a second, just because there's formative stuff in. I think it's actually interesting to me that this time is not jogging a lot of memories initially, which I think can often be the case. So I think what we'll do it sometimes is something we always do on the show. Do you have a first crush, a first love or heartbreak
I've been thinking about this. And really, I feel like my most profound teenage crush was Pink.
No, the singer, the pop singer.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I just loved her so much. I still love her now. I actually cannot believe I've never seen her live. But she was really my love. So not a crush in a romantic way, but I just had a huge just life crush on her.
Right.
And then I remember I loved Save the Last Dance and 10 Things I Hate About You. And I also had a huge life crush on Julia Stiles. And I actually went to the BAFTAs a few years ago and I stood next to her and was like, and had that thing of, they were my two just girl vibe, girl crush. Just their energies and talent and all the stuff. So that is who I really think of in my teenage years.
Right. Do you recall like something of awkwardness? I would think maybe standing next to an icon from your teenage years. Were you flushed then? And can you recall? I'm just wondering, because you're actually striking me as a very sound, confident person.
Oh no!
And I know that not everybody, whatever, you might project something. We're all.
I didn't speak to her. Okay, I went a bit funny, and and I was with my agent and Hilda, And she said, say hi. I was like, I can't say hi.
Yeah, I still
Julie's
feel that way
times.
often. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few people that usually I sort of swallow it and act like I'm cool, but I'm not cool.
Yeah.
So no, that made me feel very, very strange to see her in real life. But in terms of awkwardness as a teenager, I think I was always pretty all right. But and I mean, might be TMI, but I have hormonal things. So I do.
Oh, I did read that.
So I do remember.
And you were sort of outspoken about it.
Yeah, a lot of my teenage life, though I was a late bloomer, I do remember either being in pain or like sad, and I thought
That's huge though. I don't want to say it's huge. It's formative.
yeah,
I mean, for me, I would say that sadness, I mean, it's not as simple as sadness, but I would say forms of pain probably mark this period of life for me more than anything else, that I can recall. And it doesn't, I don't want to paint that onto yours, but it's pretty significant. And it sounds like, one thing I wasn't experiencing a lot of was physical pain. It sounds like you were experiencing physical pain. And as a result of, we can connect this around to some of the project you're doing now, like the unique physical body of a woman,
Yeah.
Like you, right?
Yeah.
So did that impact your relationship to the way you thought about growing up and blossoming as a girl to a woman?
I think it's strange. I was talking about this yesterday to someone, and I sort of forget that how formative it is. But yeah, I mean, there were days where I literally wouldn't be able to go to school because I was in so much pain.
Right.
And then that was sorted-ish. But in terms of, I do remember getting to my 20s and everything was sort of fine. And I thought I was just a sad, but this sounds so bleak. But I was like, I thought I was just a sad person. But actually, it was something that was outside of my control. And puberty, I think, for anyone can be quite disconnecting, like head to body and everything that's going on. And then for the most part, it was sort of fine. But those instances of pain or upset were pretty hefty. And I suppose that's also something wonderful about being at a boarding school, because everyone talks and everyone's open and everyone knows what's going on with each other. Right. So you just don't feel alone because everyone's going through it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
So when did you start to feel like you really identify with performing and acting specifically?
I really loved it towards when we actually really started doing it. And I remember at the school I returned to when I was 16, you could choose to do the dance, musical theatre or drama course. And I remember thinking, I really want to do musical theatre and drama, but I love me some musical theatre. So I didn't do the drama course, but I remember really feeling drawn to that. And then just had some really great teachers and again, I didn't know what that would look like, but I certainly did feel like that's what I wanted to do in a creative way. I didn't understand how to do it, but it felt like I was drawn to doing that, probably really from 16, 17. And then, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, everything did happen pretty quickly. But obviously at the time...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but when you decide to do something and you're like, please give me an audition. And then you never hear back, and all of those learning things take a minute to adjust to.
And the years between 17 and 21, they are long.
Yeah.
It's 4 years, but those are huge years, each one of them. You're like a different person every year. Yeah. Can we? I want to move on to your project. Give me just a little bit of a snapshot of like when you got out of the professional world. You're auditioning. You're working at a pub. It sounds like you said.
Yes, I had a number of jobs. I worked at 2 pubs for a considerable amount of time. I worked at Abercrombie and Fitch as a t-shirt folder, so we were hidden in the depths, in the bowels of the shop. For quite a while.
I think you might be the second person we've had on the show who worked at Abercrombie and Fitch. I can't remember who the other was, but I've heard it before.
I wonder if they were hidden though. We were the ones that. I mean, there's all sorts of things
hidden. Yeah. Wait. What is that? That's actually.
It's just there are different sorts of jobs there. It's so messed up. But when the head of the company...
Were you not like the poster image enough?
No. So there were the models and then there were Impact and we did all the behind the scenes stuff. And then when the head of the company came, we were not allowed to go to the shop floor.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, people were picked. I mean, I'm not saying
That's
anything out of turn. I think there was a documentary made about it. But yeah, people were handpicked to be available.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, I was sick of
How did that make you feel?
I mean, I had
Did you care?
such a nice group of friends there. We were just having a great time.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, okay. So I had a number of jobs. I worked weirdly enough, I did a film before Christmas, and the first day filming, we were in Canada Water, which is a place in the city that's sort of known for being the financial part of financial district, I guess. And next to it was a mall. We were in one building, was a mall that I worked at when I was dressed as an elf, as a Christmas elf. And these kids, I don't know who paid for it, honestly, but kids would come round and take a picture with the princesses, and we were the elves with the princesses. And I'm still curious as honestly who was paying the events company to employ us. And then I got promoted because one of the princesses couldn't make it. So I've also been a princess in a shopping mall, event stuff. I mean, I've had quite a lot of jobs.
How long was it that you're out there in the world like that auditioning before you got the audition for Star Wars?
I mean, looking back, so I left school at 18, went traveling for 6 months. So by the time I was auditioning and stuff, into 19, and then I got the job when I was
something like 2 years?
2021. So yeah, about 2 years. I packed a lot into that time.
Yeah. Well, as you do when you're that age.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of that time too, and it's every year is so distinct, and you have so much experience to look back on. Were you? I mean, when you got the opportunity, was it like, oh, this is just another audition, there's no way I'm getting it? Were you thinking, this is something I'm really interested in?
I sought out the audition.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I was walking down the street with my friend who's a stylist. I actually don't know if she knows that she was the one that said it, but she was a stylist, but like a fashion stylist, and a friend of ours who was a fashion makeup artist, because I met them on an advert I did for ASOS. And one of them said, oh, I heard they're auditioning.
Wait, does that mean that you did a little bit of modeling?
No, it was funny. It was technically an acting job, but I wore clothes. Okay. And actually, I'm still friends with the director. He's so great. But the audition was, you had to wave at a guy that you fancied, and I did something really stupid, and I was like, never going to get that job, and then I got the job. But we were sort of laughing and frolicking. It was fun. But one of them said, oh, I heard there are these Star Wars auditions. And for whatever reason, I knew nothing about who they were casting, nothing. And I was like, I'm going to get that job. So I said to my agent at the time, I really need an audition for the film. And they were like, okay, don't even know what they're looking for. And then a few months later, probably, I did get an audition because a lot of people were auditioning. And I just felt like I was going to get it. I just felt in my bones that it was going to happen. It's one of those strange things.
Have you had strong intuitions like that before in life?
Yeah, people call me witchy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I have, I can be pretty at one with the universe. Not all the time.
That's very cool.
But there are moments. But really, that was I would say that's my only professional moment where I thought, this is something that is meant for me. It was the strangest thing. Out of context, nothing.
And did you have any kind of relationship with Star Wars as a fan, or, I mean, it's bigger than big, so everybody is aware of it. Everybody, but did you grow up with it?
No, I don't know that I'd seen all of them. And even the audition, I remember there were various people, obviously in code. And looking back, I'm like, oh, it was Han Solo, or oh, it was, and I was like, didn't know who anyone was. Yeah. So I didn't really have much of a relationship, and that was the other strange thing. I thought, I don't know why I feel so drawn to this thing.
Yeah, right.
And then I remember when I was auditioning, I just saw it everywhere. Every clothes shop, there was a T-shirt. Everything, there was a poster. And then it became very much part of my life.
I would imagine you have had to grapple with the fandom of Star Wars a lot. Like, you know, I mean, it's important to, like, that fanship is millions strong, and they're what make the movie so big.
Yep.
Right? So, like, everybody who's in it has to contend with what you mean to the canon, to them, right? And given that you didn't have a relationship to it before, was there something... Well, first of all, I'm interested, while you were shooting, did you ever think about that? Because I would think that would really...
No. And I'm glad I didn't, because
really
I think that would have screwed me up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just... So you're just, like, focused on that. And I want to get into that for a moment. But because, you know, as an actor... relatively little of our time is spent on camera between action and cut. So much more time is spent kind of living with this thing that people know you for. So I'm curious, like, what has that been like? I just find something very special about the fact that you really didn't, you know, Star Wars as a thing was not on your radar. And then you just had this intuition, and then suddenly you're like...
I think it was helpful to not really know. I knew it was everywhere, and I knew there was an awareness. I didn't fully comprehend the love that people have for it. I do remember the first thing we did, the first presentation, I think it's the first presentation, was at Celebration, and we came out and they introduced us and they introduced the trailer. And I remember getting back to the hotel room afterwards and crying my eyes out, not for a bad reason, but it was such an overwhelm of energy. I had never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
But generally, I feel really embraced. I mean, you know, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, but I feel people have been very embracing towards me. And I think really I had a great time on all three of the films. So that has always felt wonderful to me to be part of it. But I also know, and I'm a small part in this amazing, huge thing that involves so many people.
Of course.
So it's quite nice, because it's scary. I remember being scared before the film came out and everything, but you look around and you're like, oh my God, we're all sharing in this thing together. So in that way, it's wonderful to be in a film that is so ensemble led, and it's a group of us who love each other, and I had never been on a set for longer than 2 weeks, and I loved that crew so much and have been able to work with a lot of them again, sometimes more than twice. So it really, all of it was, I mean, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Suddenly being like, hello. And I can be quite shy. So I found that to be a bit weird, and thinking, oh my God, I have to say something and try and sound articulate and intelligent. But generally, yeah, it's all been a great ride.
What if there's anything that you feel like, apart from all of that stuff, because that's a huge part of the experience, but I'm, again, just being interested in how you were drawn to the role intuitively. And I know, you know, for me, like, anytime I'm on a project, regardless of what I think it's about, there's these moments where you'll have a really great line that boils down to something universally human, some really simple emotion. Like, you might have a line that in the context of the scene, you're saying, like, I'm afraid no one will love me, you know, and you realize in that moment, all this time you've spent thinking about all these other things, you're like, wow, that's what this is about. And I find that at some point, every character kind of, it's an opportunity to learn something. Every character teaches you something. It sounds a little bit hokey, but at the same time, I think it's true. You know, if there's one thing you could say that Rey has taught you, or playing Rey has taught you, if there's one theme or thing that you feel like you have gotten from her over the arc, is there anything?
It's interesting, as you were saying that, the image that sprung to mind, and actually it wasn't a line, it was an image, is I remember seeing Harrison after he had seen the film for the first time. And he talked about the image of me being in a sand dune by myself in the great expanse of the galaxy, and trying on a helmet and taking it off and looking so alone. And he got emotional talking about that image. So I feel like that for me has always felt very profound, of a person who is so alone, but sort of happy, but alone, and then finding their way into this gaggle of wonderful people. So probably that family feeling of finding a family, even if you're not necessarily surrounded by one, in a what do you call it, blood related way.
Yeah, right. Well, he's probably high, wasn't he? You know. Come on. And it's an easy one. No, it is a beautiful image. It really is. Let's move on to, so what I was going to do with my co-host, we had divided and conquered. We'd all watched one of your
oh my God, love
newest movies. And so now I've only watched one.
Hilarious.
So I'm going to go on to that one. And then if we have time, I have their questions from the other movies that I was not able to watch. But let me start with The Young Woman in the Sea, because that's the one that's coming out now anyway. I want to tell you that, again, I knew nothing about it, knew relatively little about you, frankly. Knew nothing about Trudy, the protagonist. And I was just, basically after the 30-minute mark, I was just constantly weeping. Like I was even proud of like her being an American, which I don't often feel. I got to tell you, like really, it's not a common feeling for me. I was upset for her. I was actually I was angry with these people surrounding her at some point, you know, with the resistance and sabotage and stuff. And before we get on to any of that, I have spent the last 3 days shooting a sequence that I can't explain other than that I have been wet the entire time.
Okay.
I have been wet and I'm sore and bruised. Right. And actually the last season of my show, I spent one full day in an underwater tank. Right. So I can't help but think that you have some water stories.
Yeah.
I would how did your relationship to water change?
Yeah.
In this?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I couldn't swim 20 meters. The first swimming test I did, I stood up halfway and I was like out of breath and thought I was going to die. And I said, I can't do this.
And is that after you got the role?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's interesting.
And look, I never said I was an amazing swimmer. I said, give me some lessons. I'm sure I could learn. But I did tell them I was scared of open water, and I think they thought I was joking, and I was being dead serious.
Wow.
And
did you spend a lot of time out in the real ocean for this?
Yes.
You must have.
Yes. So I trained for 3 months, 3-4 times a week. And then filming involved quite a lot of swimming. And then I was also training outside of that because the big swim, I spent 9 days in the Black Sea. Swimming, and a lot of that was the psychological build up to that, and then my body was knackered, and each time it was a bit of an overwhelm because I would be on a boat drying off, and then my amazing doubles would line up in the sea, and then I would be plopped into the sea by a safety boat, and then the boat in the film, the Alsace, would start moving, and I would have to match my pace to them moving and make sure that I was staying with the camera. So it was, and it was freezing, cold, cold. There had been a storm, and it was the most unusually cold weather for July, I think of course it was. I was like, yeah,
of course, always when you're shooting.
Actually,
always. The
day that it was so hideously cold was the first time you see me and Tilda as Meg and Trudy, when the little E's become the biggies. That water was ice. It was really, really cold.
That's when you're swimming around the pier, right?
Yeah. But no, my relationship to water, I mean, after the film, I was so proud of myself. And then we had done 1 day in the tank for the nighttime stuff. And we did 1 day for the underwater camera stuff. And I have not done a front crawl stroke since. And that was 2 years ago. I've got in a pool when I was on holiday and lay there.
Right.
But I'm good.
What about the ocean?
I'm good. Not the ocean, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. It's freezing.
Yeah, I know. I really don't like not being able to see down. So also, I just remember on the last swim I had to do Yoakum, the director just said swim as long as you can. And I just remember hearing, because of course, the only thing you're hearing is your own breath.
Yeah.
And sort of telling myself I could carry on. And I mean, I'm really proud of what I did physically, but I was, you know, when people finish a physical film, they're like, yeah, I'm going to go run a marathon. I was like, I'm good. I will be on dry land and I will sit down and not do any more swimming.
Were you aware? Well, first, give us just like a little, for anybody who's listening and doesn't know, just give us just a brief little, you know, synopsis of the film and who Trudy was and is.
So the real Trudy Ridley was the first woman to swim the Channel. She was an amazing swimmer, an amazingly fast swimmer.
The English Channel. I'm just saying for our American
Channel,
viewers
yes,
as well.
from
who
France
don't just
to
refer to
England.
it as the Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
She competed in the Olympics and she did 2 attempts to swim the Channel. The first one, she says that she was poisoned by her coach.
I was wondering how anyone might have known that and if it was corroborated then or...
So it wasn't corroborated because, of course, no one believed her. But
Yeah, right.
the film is based on a book that Glenn Stout wrote, and her recounting of it was that no matter how far she swam, she was never tired afterwards. But she had some beef soup when she was doing the swim, and she essentially started drowning. And then when they took her out of the water, she slept for 18 hours or something. And
Whoa.
she said, that is just not what I do. It's not how I recover.
Yeah.
And of course, no one believed her.
And it never happened any other time.
So the second attempt, she was successful. So Young Women in the Sea, our film, tells the true story of that swim, but has taken some creative license around.
Of course.
Has condensed some family members and condensed some other people. But essentially it charts Trudy from child when she, which again is true, battled measles and they thought she would not make it, but she did. Right through to when she completed the swim, and it was the biggest parade ever in New York history. There are a million people there. Yeah.
That really impressed me. I was wondering as I'm seeing it, like, this is a huge reception. Did she really get this kind of reception?
There were a million people there.
What?
There's never, ever been a bigger
A
TikTok
million
parade.
people.
Yeah.
What year is that?
1926.
A million people in 1926?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 1926, that is right, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
I'm hoping
around
it's
then.
right.
This is not a quiz.
Yeah.
This is not,
I'm like, yeah, but I should know.
I just wasn't quite sure the decade.
But really, so it is this amazing athletic feat, and honestly, what she did changed women's sport forever. Her sister invented the bikini. The bikini that she wore.
It's
It's amazing.
That was amazing.
Yeah, all these things I didn't know. Certainly, a lot of people don't know.
And that it was practical too.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting because the bikini, if anything, seems like something that men designed for women to wear less clothing.
Yeah.
But it was a practical design,
Yeah.
so she would have less drag.
I mean, the costumes we started with were so heavy. It was unbelievable that anyone could have done anything remotely athletic in, I'm not joking, probably weighed 10 kilos when that stuff was wet.
I am so sore right now because I've been in soaking wet clothing for the last 3 days in this sequence, as I was saying. And I was thinking to myself, like, these people used to swim in clothing.
Yeah.
And I've been going through that viscerally. Like, that did not look, what's the word? What would that be? It's not
Hydrating.
aerodynamic. Hydrodynamic?
Yeah, what would it be?
Is that
Aerodynamic? Probably hydrodynamic, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. But really, it's a film. People have described it to me as something they haven't seen in a while. It's a really feel-good film.
It is.
And the
It
family
is.
are...
In the best way,
Yeah.
though. I want to testify, anybody listening. just any old feel good for me, like, is really not my sensibility.
Interesting.
Like, at all. This really won me over. I mean, it really won me over. I'm telling you, I was weepy throughout because it's true as well. Like, you're seeing this person overcome an incredible obstacles. I mean, I just like, so I've been curious for you, you know, what did you have this experience of, I mean, playing a real person? Have you ever done that before, by the way?
No. And I feel like it's because it was 100 years ago, I read and researched as much as I could, but because there isn't that much about her, so I didn't feel entirely going in like I was playing a real person. I felt like I was playing a version of someone who did this amazing thing.
Yeah, right. Did you feel a little bit, I've once played a real person before, and I felt like at some points it's a weird phrase to use, but you did say witchy earlier, so I'm going to go with it. I felt like I was chasing a ghost a little bit.
Oh, okay.
You know, but that's also like, I felt a kinship with this person, and I felt like I was, and he also lived much more recently. I mean, 100 years is a long time ago, and although no, she died so recently. She lived so long.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you know what? That's interesting. That's kind of different because she wasn't a tragic figure. She didn't die young.
No.
Yeah. So okay. So I guess what was your experience of like striving to do her justice, or maybe her family justice? Did you think about that at all?
I did. I felt like, but I felt like a lot of that work honestly had been done because the book, not that it had been done, but the stage had been set in that beautiful way because the book really honors her. And I think the script really honors her. So I came in, and honestly, I think it was probably nicer for me to not feel so like I had to imitate or mimic.
Yeah,
it
I
gave
get that.
me a lot
It's
of
not
freedom.
a biopic, really.
Yeah.
It's more like a story about the triumph of her will.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to me. I was just kind of staggered by that this was true.
Yeah, so I felt like I got the best of both worlds because I was part of telling this amazing story and then got to do my thing. And really one of the things I wanted to do was make it feel joyful. She is, and she just loved swimming. As far as we know, she just loved swimming. And
do you know what drove her? I mean, did she ever get philosophical about it?
I think she just loved it.
Does anybody else?
And I found that honestly to be the most amazing thing, because for people to set out and do change is amazing. But I also
love that she was really risking her life. Yeah, I mean, anybody was.
But I love that she just loved it, and there's no other explanation. And I wanted to keep that sacred because I think also it could have been. There are a number of different ways to show what was driving her, but I just wanted there to be joy, and
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and resilience, and I also wanted the feeling that people do amazing things by themselves, but we do amazing things when we're together. And I wanted that feeling of when her family are there, she is unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. That's what was making me weepy. Actually, was the way her family ultimately supports her. You know, like her siblings, her parents. You know, I'm not quite sure what the reality was, but I'm sure they were pulling. I mean, how true to her life do you think that is?
There were more siblings, but I think the parents were very supportive. And I also, it's an interesting thing to see her and her sister because they're both representative of two massively different moments. Her sister has to stay at home, has to marry who she's told to. She has to do all these things that arguably are just as hard as what Trudy's doing. She has to do all of the things socially that were expected. And Trudy got to go off and do her thing that she wanted to do. So I feel like, and I really wanted this love story between these sisters. They're both representing two totally different bits, but they love each other more than anything.
Yeah, and that's so clear.
Yeah.
It was refreshing to not have the requisite sort of male love thing going on, or any love, you know, like a romantic relationship. because you really get that from her family.
Yeah.
This is undeniably, it's a feminist film. I think it's feminist in its themes and exploring. Do you feel like playing this role emphasized, changed, influenced any of your feelings about like that word, or just your relationship to telling stories about women and especially the last century of like overcoming plight, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I think
doesn't have to. It's undeniably like I was thinking to myself that this is the kind of film that so many girls will see and will be able to watch now, whenever. And it felt to me like it's meant to be doing that, for.
It certainly is. It certainly made me think 100 years ago was a long time and not that long. And there are obviously moments where I thought, goodness me, we should be further along than we are.
Of course.
And I mean, it's an amazing moment for women in sport. Caitlin Clark is everywhere, and conversations about pay disparity and representation. And so it was one of those things that, firstly, she did this amazing thing and has been forgotten, which is
totally forgotten, by the
totally
way.
Forgotten.
That's staggered me as well, because she shattered, I don't think we've said it, she shattered the men's record at that point.
By hours.
She did it in like, which is huge.
Yeah.
She did it in like 13 something hours.
Yeah.
With getting lost.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's there were certainly moments, I mean, at the time, trying to make a great film and hoping that it's good. And then after the fact, I thought, woof. And I actually felt more after finishing. I felt more like there was some baggage that I hadn't realized at the time of being in a world where it was just so difficult for women. And honestly, I thought, thank God I was born when I was born. And for anyone in the past century, in the past however long, to be breaking down barriers, to be doing what they want to do is amazing.
How much in your research did it check out that, because particular, I don't know that I want to, well, let's go ahead and say we've been discussing things that are technically spoilers. Here's a little bit of it's not a spoiler for anything that happens in the end, but her coach,
yes,
he's a man who has tried to swim the channel and has failed.
Yeah.
And then he poisons her. Is that true? I mean, because that like enraged me. I saw it coming right as it was happening. I was like, no. This man is about to sabotage her own coach. And of course, I mean, countless women, people of color, whatever. That's something that happens. That is something that happens. The people who are supposed to support you are the ones who sabotage you. That can even happen in family, unfortunately. But just. At first, it seemed outrageous, and then I thought, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. She was surrounded by men who didn't want her to break this record.
Yeah. Well, they just didn't want her to do it. I mean, people driven by fear do terrible things. Now I'm like concerned that the film is making me forget the real research, but from what I remember, I think it was Wolf, and he is the person that she accused of poisoning her. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds totally plausible.
Yeah.
I mean,
mad.
Let me ask you one more question. I saw this. Are you did you take a doula course?
I did.
My wife is a doula.
Is she?
Yeah, so I mean she's been to hundreds of births, and she has like a lot of experience, and
wow.
She has like a doula collective, and so doulas and midwives and just like new families, mothers, babies is just such an enormous part of my life. I do also have a 3.5-year-old, so went through it very recently. What was that like? What inspired you to take a doula training?
It was love me some babies, as you saw when
I saw that.
The squishy baby. I have a 2-year-old nephew and a 6-month-old nephew, and oh my God, they're squishy little faces. So love me some babies, just sweet little innocent things. And then my friend got pregnant, sort of a surprise. And when she told me, she said that she was doing this doula course And I had been very interested in her whole experience of pregnancy. And there was a space on the course. So I did it. And I was unusual in that by that time she had had the baby and everyone else had children and I didn't. And I have not attended a birth. But I found it to be wonderful. We were doing it through lockdown. So firstly, it was an amazing collection of people on Zoom. It was very nourishing. I don't think I had ever been in a sort of female-centric group, and it was wonderful. And I learned a lot, and I loved listening to all of their experiences. And that was sort of as far as it went, because I then didn't attend a birth. But I'm just really into all the amazing things that women's bodies can do. Yeah, but I've never actually attended a birth. But I find all of it just amazing. And then that friend that was on the doula course, her second baby came in 6 hours at home, which was amazing. Wow. But all of those points of meeting and culturally different ways around the world that people have given birth for many, many years, and the ways in which people support each other, and it's just wonderful. It's just a wonderful thing to view, really.
No, I'm totally in agreement. It's really one of the first things I fell in love with my wife. It was very much, it's like my life before the birth world and after, very much, it's a huge thing. Okay, our last question we ask everybody. If you could go back to your 12-year-old self, 12-year-old Daisy, what would you say or do?
What would I say to 12-year-old me? I would say follow your instincts. Even if you make some decisions that you come to regret, that you come to want to reverse, like leaving school, even though your mother told you. You shouldn't, because you don't really want to. But I feel like all things, good things, bad things, stupid things, lead, push you forward. So that is what I would say. Follow your instincts, even if they're stupid.
Well, it sounds like that's what you've done, and they've certainly not been stupid. I mean,
We've all been fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But generally, also just find joy in things. And I think, honestly, being an adult, it's become easier. I feel calmer, and I feel I find gratitude in everything. So find the joy in all of it, Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a joy to have you on.
Thank you.
You can see Daisy's performance as Gertrude Ederle in the biographical drama Young Woman in the Sea, and you can follow her online at Daisy Ridley.
We are so excited that you can now listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music. In fact, you can listen to any episode of Podcrushed ad-free right now on Amazon Music with an Amazon Prime membership.